everybody. Welcome to another Monday on the Mountain. I am clearly not Pastor Ken. This is Pastor Seth. And just want to do a real quick recap, kind of a summarization of what we talked about yesterday. When we first walked into our talk yesterday, the first thing we asked ourselves was, do we find that sometimes we're stuck and we seem to be repeating, in particular, the sins of our fathers? And it seems like our path is almost laid out for us, and we're doomed to repeat the same failures. And we just we looked at the history of the Bible and how that kind of seems oddly to be the same story there. In particular, we looked at violence, and even more in particular, violence between brothers. And that seems so wrong, so against nature. But it happens right from the beginning. I mean, Cain and Abel, right at the beginning, Cain kills Abel, right? So right off the bat, the first pair, they're screwing this up. And it just this repeat, this cycle that happens throughout the history of the Bible. And we look, and if we look carefully and we compare our history to what the Bible says, ours is not much different, right? We're not in much of a different place. It's so easy to look back and point out the failures we see in the Bible. And kind of a side note, by the way, I didn't mention this yesterday, but that's maybe one of the reasons that you can believe the Bible more than any mythology, more than any story religion, because the Bible doesn't try and cover up these ugly stories that we see throughout history of the Bible. There's no hiding them away. We have to wrestle with them and deal with them, but they're there and they're not covered up. And that for me is always a way we look at the Bible and know and trust its validity. We got this brotherly violence. It seems actually that even towards the end, we look at Acts 9, and once again, there's this guy named Saul. He's from the tribe of Benjamin, and he's trying to kill, people from the tribe of Judah. Which you're like, hold on, where is that story at? You look at Acts 9, and that's Saul, who we know later as Paul, from the tribe of Benjamin. He says, I'm an Israelite, from the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, and he's on his way to kill followers of Jesus, who, ironically, is this man from the tribe of Judah. Is where his lineage is from. And so it's this whole story that seems connected, and there's too many coincidences going on. And in between all of these stories of violence, even at the end, culmination, in between, there's always a thread of goodness. And one of my first questions is, are you going to be, and do you want to be, that thread of goodness in between the story of chaos, right? There's this idea of firsts, right? And Abraham has the opportunity to continue the sins of his fathers, violence, and not taking care of people. And he chooses to instead buck that trend and partner with God. And that's what I asked yesterday, is will you partner with God today in your life? If you're faced with these generational sins and failures, first step is partner with God. Say, God, I unhook my partnership from the world and from my own selfish desires, and I partner with you and what your plan is. And see how that goes. I bet you it's going to work really well. That's the story. That's how God's putting the world back together, is through a partnership with you, with his people. The first of their family, that's huge. I'm a second generation believer. My mom was the first believer in her family. And my dad, same thing. He comes from a family of professing believers, but his dad walked away from his family when he was like 8. And he was the first one to stay with his family. Are you going to be the first in your family? Do you want to be the first in your family and start a new trend, a new generation? When people look back and say, man, I come from a history of believers because of what they did. Not, I come from a family of adulterers because of what that person did. Or I come from a family of drunkards or sinners or lustful fiends because of what that guy did. No, be the first in your family today. One other thing that I really just want to touch on real quick is calling out those generational things. I think identifying them is huge. And once they're in the light, all of a sudden they can't spring up on you again. There's no surprise attacks when everything's in the light. So call them out and commit them to God. Say, God, I see these things and I need you to do something about this. Can you change me? And then last but not least, ask for a Damascus road in your life. That moment when Saul was on his way to perpetuate that cycle, Jesus intervened and said, no, listen here. I'm going to perpetuate the cycle of back and forth redemption. There's this other story, this little mini story all throughout, and it's this idea of when Judah, Joseph's brother, he sticks his neck out for Benjamin, his younger brother. And then it's crazy, that happens in Genesis, and all throughout this Bible, it seems to be happening back and forth. Benjamin saves Judah. Judah saves Benjamin, right? And if you watch the sermon from yesterday, you'll see we'll point those out in particular. But it's wild because in the end, it's about to start again. The cycle's about to start up again. Saul from the tribe of Benjamin is about to kill followers of Jesus from the tribe of Judah. And instead, Jesus steps in, and he gives Saul that moment, right? He blinds him first, then spends 3 days doing whatever, ministering to him, partnering with him. And the world has changed from there. And that's what I think we can do today as followers of Christ and as members of this story, because we're grafted in. We can decide today to be that first, to buck the trend, to partner with God, to call out our generational sins and put them in the light, and then let God give us a Damascus Road moment. That's all I got for you guys today. I don't have any Kona coffee. In fact, I have Starbucks, so I'm sorry about that, but it is delicious. So cheers, everyone. Happy Monday.